She thought she could sue me for my solar panels, but I had a secret weapon that ended her reign, exposing a $47,000 HOA scandal and leaving her with nothing but a painful charge. The courtroom hushed as Judge Miller's gaze lifted from the stack of papers. A knowing smile almost touched my lips. This was going exactly as I'd foreseen. His eyebrows shot up, practically vanishing into his hairline, as he slowly, deliberately set down his spectacles. "Oh, someone was about to get a verbal lashing, wasn't they?" "Miss Peterson," the judge began, his voice laced with pure disbelief. "Am I truly understanding this? You've brought a lawsuit against this gentleman because his home isn't part of your homeowners association?" Karen Peterson, self-proclaimed queen of the Willow Creek Estates HOA, stood rigid in a suit that screamed mid-level manager at a struggling corporation. "That is correct, Your Honor," she declared with unwavering conviction. "His blatant disregard for our community's aesthetic standards is absolutely tanking property values for the entire neighborhood." The judge then turned to me. Without a word, I calmly slid a single sheet of paper across the gleaming wooden surface. "Your Honor," I stated, my voice barely concealing my amusement, "this is a certified property survey map from the county assessor's office. As you can clearly see, my residence is situated in the peaceful Havenwood Trails development. It's a completely separate community. We don't even share an entrance." Judge Miller didn't hesitate. He picked up his gavel, brought it down with a resounding thump, and announced, "Case dismissed with prejudice." "Miss Peterson, let me be crystal clear. If you ever file another baseless lawsuit in my courtroom, you will be held in contempt." Karen's face cycled through an astonishing 17 shades of crimson, settling somewhere between bruised plum and volcanic fury. Just 3 short weeks before this dramatic courtroom showdown, I had been living my absolute best life in my brand new home at 42 Havenwood Drive. As a remote software engineer, after years of cramped apartment living, I'd finally saved enough for this perfect little ranch house. It even had a workshop out back where I could happily tinker with my beloved vintage motorcycle collection. And the best part? Havenwood Trails had no HOA, no insane rules about lawn height, no forced exterior color palettes, and absolutely no ridiculous monthly fees for services I neither wanted nor needed. My property line sat a mere 23 feet from the boundary of Willow Creek Estates, the HOA-controlled neighborhood next door. Close enough to wave at friendly faces, but thankfully, far enough to escape their bureaucratic madness. Or so I naively thought, didn't I? Karen Peterson, a woman of 57 with a perpetually scowling face framed by a helmet of bleached blonde hair, had been ruling Willow Creek Estates like her personal kingdom since 2016. She patrolled the streets with a measuring tape and a violation pad, a self-appointed parking enforcement officer with grand delusions, hunting for any perceived infraction. And then, the trouble truly began. I installed solar panels on my roof, entirely legal, properly permitted, and firmly on my own property. But Karen, spotting them during her morning power walk, immediately decided they were a personal insult to her supreme authority. That very afternoon, she marched up my driveway, clipboard clutched in hand. "These solar panels," she declared, as if delivering a royal edict, "are absolutely not approved by the Willow Creek Architectural Review Committee." Still washing my motorcycle, I calmly retorted, "Good thing I don't live in Willow Creek then, isn't it?" Her face visibly twitched. "Your property," she snarled, a menacing edge to her voice, "impacts our community's visual harmony. You must submit an application for retroactive approval." I slowly stood, wiping my hands on a rag. "Karen," I said, keeping my voice as even as possible, "I've seen you around, so let me be perfectly clear. I don't live in your HOA. I don't pay dues to your HOA. I am not, have never been, and will never be subject to your HOA rules. Have a truly wonderful day." That should have been the end of it. But oh, how wrong I was. The very next morning, a violation notice was taped to my front door. Not mailed, not slipped into my mailbox, but brazenly taped to my door, like some archaic public decree. It cited me for unauthorized solar installation, a non-compliant mailbox design, and even excessive driveway oil stains from my motorcycles. The notice demanded I appear before the HOA board or face daily fines of $100 per violation. I snapped a photo, then called my lawyer friend David. He burst into laughter for a solid minute. "Keep that," he finally managed. "It's clear evidence of harassment." Karen's campaign escalated with terrifying speed. Every morning at 7 a.m. sharp, she'd be on the sidewalk, camera in hand, photographing my property. She filed complaints with the city about my workshop, ridiculously claiming it was a commercial operation because I occasionally helped friends fix their bikes. She even coerced 3 Willow Creek residents into signing a petition, ludicrously asserting my solar panels created hazardous glare, despite none of their homes actually facing mine. The absolute peak of her madness arrived when she sent a cease and desist letter via certified mail. Not from a lawyer, mind you, but typed on HOA letterhead in an infuriating Comic Sans font, demanding I immediately conform to all Willow Creek regulations or face legal action. She actually had the audacity to use the phrase aesthetic terrorism to describe my perfectly natural side yard, which I was slowly transforming into a beautiful wildflower garden. My response? I installed a flagpole and proudly flew a flag emblazoned with, "Not your HOA," in big friendly letters. Petty? Yes. Satisfying? Oh, absolutely. 2 days later, she filed the lawsuit. The legal filing itself was a masterpiece of pure delusion. She actually claimed my property's mere proximity to Willow Creek created an implied covenant that somehow bound me to their rules. She sought damages for everything: decreased property values, emotional distress, hers, presumably, and something called administrative burden compensation for all the precious time she'd supposedly spent trying to bring me into compliance. She even demanded the court retroactively force me to join the HOA and pay 5 years of back dues plus penalties. The grand total she was seeking, a staggering $23,000. When I was served, I didn't panic. I didn't even bother hiring a lawyer. Instead, I spent a mere 5 minutes gathering 3 irrefutable documents: the county property map clearly outlining the boundary lines, my deed unequivocally stating no HOA restrictions, and a simple Google Maps screenshot with a huge red arrow pointing to my house, captioned, "Not in Willow Creek Estates." The day of the hearing arrived surprisingly fast. Karen showed up with what appeared to be her entire HOA board, 7 people in matching blazers they'd clearly purchased just for the occasion. She also lugged in 3 massive binders of what she grandly called evidence. What was inside? Printed emails from residents griping about having to look at my solar panels, photos of my dandelion-studded lawn from every imaginable angle, and a truly dreadful PowerPoint presentation about property value impacts that she'd clearly made herself using clip art from 1998. She even tried to set up a projector in the courtroom. The bailiff had to tell her twice that it was strictly forbidden. When it was her turn to present, Karen launched into a furious 15-minute tirade about community standards, the sacred importance of uniformity, and how my rebellion was dangerously inspiring other residents to question HOA authority. She actually, with a straight face, declared, "If we allow one person to live outside our rules while benefiting from our community's aesthetic appeal, chaos will absolutely ensue." The judge calmly cut her off. "But he doesn't live in your community, does he?" he asked. Karen, her frustration mounting, stammered, "He lives adjacent to our community, Your Honor. His property is visible from our streets. That absolutely makes him subject to our governance." The judge then asked, slowly, as if addressing a bewildered child, "By that logic, is the gas station across the street also subject to your HOA?" Karen paused, actually considering this for a moment, before huffing, "Well, that's commercial property, so it's different." When my turn finally came, I simply stood up, handed the judge my 3 documents, and stated, "Your Honor, I reside at 42 Havenwood Drive in Havenwood Trails. Miss Peterson resides at 871 Willow Creek Drive in Willow Creek Estates. These are 2 distinct developments built by different developers in different years, with entirely different property management structures. I am no more subject to her HOA than she is subject to the rules of the apartment complex 3 blocks away." The judge studied the map for a mere 10 seconds, then looked directly at Karen. "Miss Peterson," he said, his voice firm, "are you aware that filing frivolous lawsuits can result in serious sanctions?" Karen immediately launched into another argument, insisting the lawsuit wasn't frivolous, that property boundaries shouldn't override community impact, and that she had a fiduciary duty to protect Willow Creek from what she termed adjacent non-compliance. But the judge's dismissal with prejudice meant Karen couldn't refile the same claim. Yet the story didn't end in that courtroom, did it? I filed a formal harassment complaint with the police department, armed with extensive documentation, her trespassing to tape notices to my door, her daily 7 a.m. photo sessions, and her numerous false reports to the city. The officer taking my report couldn't suppress a chuckle. "Oh, we've had issues with her before," he admitted. "She once tried to citizens arrest a mail carrier for wearing shorts that were too short. The police issued Karen a formal warning for harassment and trespassing. When the officer delivered it, she actually tried to lecture him on HOA bylaws. He told her flatly, 'Ma'am, HOA rules do not supersede actual laws.' I then sent a letter to every single resident in Willow Creek Estates, enclosing copies of the court dismissal, the police report, and a simple pointed note: 'Your HOA president spent association funds on a frivolous lawsuit against someone who doesn't even live in your neighborhood. You might want to ask where else your dues are really going.' The response was instant and utterly brutal. It turned out Karen had been siphoning HOA funds for all sorts of questionable expenses, including those matching blazers for the board members, and a laptop she claimed was for HOA business but primarily used for her side hustle selling essential oils. At the emergency HOA meeting the following Tuesday, Residents demanded a full financial audit. Karen tried desperately to table the motion, but the board immediately overruled her. When she began shrieking about constitutional violations and hostile takeovers, the vice president actually had to use a backup gavel to quiet her down because she refused to let go of the main one. The vote to remove her as president? A resounding 28-1. Her only vote was her own. She stood up, wildly pointing at various board members, and shrieked that they would all regret this when property values plummeted without her leadership. The new president's very first motion was to refund all residents a portion of their dues that had been squandered on the lawsuit. Her second, to ban Karen from holding any HOA position for the next 5 years. When the financial audit concluded 2 weeks later, it revealed Karen had shockingly spent $47,000 of HOA funds on legal fees, not just for my case, but for 12 other failed attempts to enforce HOA rules on non-HOA properties, including that very gas station across the street she'd tried to fine for its neon signage. The HOA then filed a civil suit against Karen herself for misuse of funds. She was ordered to repay $32,000 in restitution and slapped with an additional $15,000 in punitive damages. As the judge read the judgment, Karen's jaw literally dropped so far open you could see her back molars. She actually whispered, "But I was protecting property values," before her new lawyer frantically shushed her. What an unbelievable saga, wouldn't you agree?